Hey, it's Chris Herbert, and welcome to my Monday morning podcast for Monday, August the 4th, 2025. I'm going to dig right into probably one of the most popular topics around, other than DJT, and that's AI. And I'm currently having really interesting conversations with people on the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI. And I just wanted to get it out there through my podcast that this is certainly something that I think is going to take me months, if not years, to sort out. Um, so um, I use AI quite extensively now, and I don't really want to be thought of as a fanboy of AI, a fanboy, of some of the tech entrepreneurs out there that are leading, in some of these LLMs, such as OpenAI's and which we use extensively for MI6, and also we use Google's Notebook LLM, for example. Less Gemini, and I can't figure out whether Gemini is part of Notebook LLM or not, but I do like Notebook LLM. I'm currently using it right now, putting together something on the topic of the good and the bad and the ugly of AI. So I have this information coming to me from various sources, but I've been having a chat with a really good friend of mine who I've known for the past 15 or so years, who was a web developer. Um, and I have a heck of a lot of respect for him because he's a really good developer. He's not only a good developer technically, but he actually, thinks about building an application um, based on whether there's an actual need for it. So if you wanted to hire him to develop a web application, the first thing he would be asking himself is, whether this is something, that the customer should buy from him, should hire him to build. That's the type of guy he is. And there's a lot more to this gentleman and friend, that I'm going to talk about now. But um, suffice to say, just in the case of any business relationship you have with people, somebody will just take an order and they'll build you something, even though they don't have a clue whether somebody actually would want that app, for example, or you agree to do some work for a customer, even though you're just taking an order, don't really care whether the customer is really doing the best thing for their business. Just as an example. Um, yeah, so if you think of developers in general, as a non-technical person, I've seen this happen so many times where a non-technical co-founder of a business who wants to build an application of some sort, finds a developer and doesn't really know whether to qualify that developer as any good or not. You know, because they come. It's like they're from a different planet. They speak different languages. Obviously, I'm not just talking about programming language, but there's a lot of jargon. And they kind of just have this halo of competency around their heads. But there are bad developers and there are good developers, and there are developers in the middle. Um, so, where's this leading me to? Well, if you were an entrepreneur and you felt that you wanted to build something that had an AI backend, for example, or had AI integrated into your solution, that automated something and that integrated some degree of machine learning, neural network um, functionality. Um, don't ask me more about that because it's clearly it's something that I don't really know a heck of a lot about, but I know that neural networks and machine learning um, are sort of the foundational things that have been in place for many, 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 many years. And now there's a layer on top of it, which is, artificial intelligence and getting to artificial general intelligence, where the implication is, that this tool, this system that's been built is actually going to be self-learning. And there's a lot of debate as to whether that will ever happen. But what's happening in the market right now is you have a bunch of people, that are saying that AGI, AI are going to change everything. That it's going to displace workers. Um, in fact, I've heard stories where, developers are now being charged to, start integrating, AI oriented development um, tools with the implication that they might be displacing themselves as coders. Um, and a good example that I want to make about this, if you come across a really, really good, ethical, experienced, highly competent software developer, whether it's a web developer, app developer. I mean, is there anything else these days? There's no client server applications being built anymore. Um, the, you know, I don't know that you're going to be able to replace somebody that can efficiently write a program or write code and build a very efficient database more than AI. And they say that's happening now. I don't believe it. And I'll give you an example outside of tech. So let's say you wanted to take a carpenter who has been building beautiful furniture for 40 or 50 years. And all of a sudden, there comes this new fangled, dangled solution that says, oh, well, this new intelligence, this new type of carpenter that just came on the scene, can actually produce, quality furniture with character, with the benefit of, 30, 40 years of mistakes, experimentation, that sort of stuff. That new fangled dangled carpenter is actually going to be able to do what this person has been doing all their adult lives. I don't see it. Another example, more broadly, we're talking about ones and zeros essentially being smarter than our brains, our human brains. Has anybody really, really, really come to the conclusion that we know everything about what our brains can do? The brain is a phenomenal organ. And to be arrogant enough to say, oh, machines are going to be smarter than humans, is a disservice to humanity. It's actually quite annoying. I choose to look at artificial intelligence as a tool to do certain things that make my job easier. But does it replace what I do all the time and for everything I do? No. There are some things that I do as shortcuts, let's face it, So we have this thing called roundups, and we use a custom GPT to summarize those articles and include the link to the source. We call them listicles, and that's a common type of tactic you use to generate awareness around your business and traffic and that sort of thing. So that's a low-hanging fruit use case. But right now, I'm actually staring at a notebook LLM session where I've added a 140-page. What is it? It's called Artificial Power, the 2025 Landscape Report. It's 123 pages. And then I have a YouTube video which has what's her name, Karen Howe or Ho, who wrote a book on artificial intelligence, and her book is called, is it in here in the notes? Yeah, it doesn't, I can't see the notes, but basically she'd written a book, yeah, The Empire of AI. And you know, that's an hour and 22-minute interview. And then a friend of mine shared a really, really good post by a developer he respects. And that article is Every Reason Why I Hate AI and You Should Too. You know, and that, I read the entire thing. That is a very long article, but it, you know, it's thorough. And it really opened my eyes and made me think, I wouldn't say entirely differently, but started thinking about, you know, implications of where we're heading with AI, especially with the big tech companies that are getting all the money, all the attention. And I would argue all the power, and will be using a lot of power, a lot of water, et cetera, et cetera. So the question now becomes, you know, do we just say AI is bad and, you know, we just, you know, advocate on it not being a technology that we should use? No, I don't think so. Do we see potential concentration of power in terms of AI? Yeah, we do already. And that's being fueled by, you know, the traditional group of organizations and people who have had the opportunity, and I would say luck, you know, to be in the right place at the right time, to fall into money, to, you know, be supported to try new things and to start companies, et cetera, et cetera. I've always wanted to, you know, I've always wanted to be in that group, or envious, you know, looking from outside into it. But I realize now that, you know, I don't want to be part of that, but I do want to figure out, if possible, you know, what role should AI play for startups and for people in general, and are there ways to make it what it is supposed to be able to do, which is to perhaps level the playing field, to help people educate themselves faster, better, you know, some of the supposed benefits of AI. And how does that look like in terms of distributed value, distributed wealth, and such? So I'm rambling on here, but, you know, the baby's in the bathwater, and, you know, the baby's not, you know, we're not throwing the bathwater out with the baby in terms of AI, but gosh, you know, it's heading in a direction that has really, really bad implications. You know, you've got Grok building a massive data center using, you know, using generators that they weren't allowed to use in order to power the data center. We've got even data centers in the U.S. where, you know, there's noise pollution, people are getting headaches, and these are data centers, you know, Facebook data centers. These aren't even AI-based data centers. You know, to me, I don't know. The general public doesn't give a shit whether it's an AI data center, a cloud data center, Facebook data center. All they see is a huge fucking building, you know, and that could, and in what appears to be, you know, many cases, sucking a lot of the water from the water system for cooling, um, ripping down trees and land and putting in massive, massive structures in order to house these data centers, creating noise pollution, and picking places, where, maybe it's a depressed region or it's a rural region where, the economic development departments and municipal governments are dying for tax dollars, and you've got data centers coming in there and the companies that want to put them in there, flexing their muscle, asking for really, really unfair tax relief, and bypassing the typical bylaws and regulatory frameworks in place to build structures, that sort of stuff. Now, that's not to say that municipalities, need to get their shit together in terms of the amount of time it takes to get things approved, because that is a problem. And this is where, I always look at the reality of the situation, right? There's a good and the bad and ugly of AI, just like there's the good and the bad and the ugly of municipal government. And we got to sort this shit out, especially in Canada, because there is like a diamond in the rough in these things. There has to be. There's something good that can come out of this. And we just have to, we can't stick our heads in the sand, but we also can't turn a blind eye to it. So yeah, I'm on this path trying to figure out, where AI fits into my life, where it fits into Area 81 in terms of helping entrepreneurs with their ventures, and building custom GPTs. And now I've added a layer where I'm trying to understand what's my carbon footprint. When I start a ChatGPT session, what does that look like in terms of the carbon that I'm emitting? And I can tell you one thing for right now, it's guesswork, because OpenAI don't disclose where their data centers are. They don't disclose whether their data centers are using fossil fuels or clean energy. And I think that that's a problem. So if you were to sort of crack this nut, the first thing that I would do if I was involved in regulatory affairs for core infrastructure that's being built in a country, it would be, if you're putting a data center in Canada, it has to run off clean energy. If you already have data centers elsewhere, you need to disclose not necessarily where they are, although I don't see why they shouldn't. There is some justification according to a ChatGPT session that says it's a proprietary thing and they don't want the competition to know where their data centers are. That's bullshit. We know where all the nuclear reactors are in the world. Why shouldn't we know where the data centers are? Anyways, I go on and on. But the first thing I would do with data centers is just really find out, where are they? Where are they all? What resources are they consuming in terms of power, in terms of water? How are they affecting the environment? What's the ecology looking like? What's the company doing to offset their emissions? What are they doing to offset some of the things they've done in terms of clear cutting, land, getting rid of trees, getting rid of agricultural land, that sort of thing. Step up. All right. Yeah. So that's it for today. Hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.